Yo, what's up, Foot Clan? Welcome to the dojo here. If you are new here, and you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and hit that ding bell for future content. All right, let's dive on in. Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Foot Clan. It's your dude, the Shredder here. So I have a scout report from this past week. As you all know, we have gotten the ban list. We got the and we also had this past weekend we had the LCS. So when you look at the ban list, you have cards like Link Cross and Destruction Sword and Smoke Grenade of the Thief getting banned. And when you look at this from a theoretical point of view and everything that's going on here is that, so let's start with let's just start down the list here. So when you look at Destruction Sword, or the Buster Lock basically off of Union Carry, it's kind of busted. Honestly, it's just really busted. I don't really like cards that take you out of using 1/3 of your 1/3 of the game. Like, you know how hard it is to do the domain lock and stuff like that. It's just really difficult to get around. I'm not really a huge fan of it. I actually, like a lot of other YouTubers, I didn't do a ban list prediction video just because I just didn't have the time because of school and stuff like that. But the problem that when I was actually analyzing and looking at a lot of the ban list predictions was that people wanted these three cards, LP and VFD ban. I really thought this was fine. I'm not a fan of VFD either. I thought it was going to be banned, but my friend said something that was actually a really good point. He was like, well, would you rather get hand looped or VFD'd and by virtual worlds? So I guess I'll take the lesser of both evils as of right now. Just 3.5 more months of VFD, I guess, is cool. I don't really have a problem with that. Link Cross. So a format ago, I said Link Cross was okay to stay. And the reason I said that a format ago it was fair was because all it does is it works well as an extender and nothing really else. It doesn't really do as much else for that matter. So, but now it was either this or Metal Marcher, and I'm kind of fine with that. I think it's a fair hit. I think it done enough. Smoke Grenade, I just hate taking cards out of your hands. So like what the Forbidden list really did, it made Dragon Link and Infernobles not able to extend, and it also took out their ability to hand rip cards, and where Dragon Link would also just take you out of the whole extra deck in a sense, and that's how they would go. And there was no limited section. I think that's where it kind of got bad, because a lot of people also wanted cards like Miscellaneous Source Band and stuff like that people just weren't really a fan of it, and they just didn't like it. True King's Return does absolutely nothing, and in this sense, and I think this card could have came back a while ago. I think the OCG has it at 3 with 3 Dino Knight. I think the difference between us and the OCG's versions of the deck is, like, if you look at the OCG version of True Draco, they don't really use, like, they don't abuse cards like Monarch, or I shouldn't say abuse, they don't use cards like Monarch, Erupt, or Border to really stop you from playing. They use actually less floodgates in a sense. I think they just use Skill Drain, which is devastating because it's at 3, and I think like Vanity's Emptiness and something like that, because their deck, the deck over there, just has more resources at hand. Like I said, they have 3 Dino Knight, the True Draco Fighter, and 3 Return. I think they also have 3 Card of Demise, which allows them to deck in and draw cards and do a lot more things better in that sense. And so then we get to the semi-limits, which don't really do anything. I think the only weird semi-limit was the Rituals, and they didn't really do anything. So like getting into it, this past weekend here, let me pull up my notes. This past weekend here, it didn't really like. We had the LCS, which is like basically a regional size online tournament that they do on Dueling Book. They run this really great event. They do this. This is where a lot of YouTubers really get their analytics from and stuff like that. This is a 244 person player event. This is probably about, if you were talking like prediction wise, you took Infernoble out, you took Dragon Link out. They can't really do anything. And now you've added other decks to kind of roll in, or more strategies. And I'm kind of not surprised. I think a shocking thing that really threw me under looking at this is the amount that Dino didn't do anything. It just did nothing. And the fact that you had the Dogma engine, which generally it went from like 33 on its release or something like that, and it's just slowly going more and more down as a deck. And I've said this, Dogma with another deck isn't enough. Dogma with 3 decks, that actually does something. Because when you look at the top 16 deck lists that you can find all over YouTube, Lithium does it, all the other YouTubers are doing. I'm not really gonna give you the top 16 list. I'm just gonna give you this, really my opinion of this report that I think is a good thing to notice, right? Like Dinos didn't really do enough. I don't know. This is what I honestly predicted the meta to look like. Like, you were gonna have Zoo, you're gonna have Virtual World, you were gonna have Outledge, and that's really the meta in a sense that I thought. Like, those 3 I knew for a fact were going to be either tier 1 to tier 1.5 strategies. I didn't really know about Drytron, and the fact that there was only 22 players, there's 22 players and only 2 made it, really speaks of how good the deck is. Because if you look at the other 2, it's 37, 41, 51. That's taking up nearly 50%, where this deck is taking, like, it's the next best. But then Dino sitting here and Dogma Invoked and Prank Kids are actually making this really seem like they can't really keep up. The one off rogue deck that top, which was actually a rogue deck, was Dogmatica. Altergeist. Yeah. So, oops, my bad. So when you go to the top 16, now that, like I said, this is really weird because now you have this interesting thing. So let's go from the bottom up here. And Dogma Invoked has not seen as much success topping, and I don't know, is that just because the players don't like it? But I think what the problem with Dogma Invoked is, and even this list I think was playing Dogma Shadal's Invoked, so it was like 3 engines that you combine together to really work. And I think that's how you get Dogma to really just go off. You have to combine all these engines, and you're seeing it with the Outledge, the Dogma Outledge, the Dogmatica Outledge, Dragoons. Like, you just have to play 3 other engines to make this deck, to make the Dogma engine kind of good. And that being said, I mean, like, when you're looking at the format in Virtual Worlds, in a sense, it's like when you're staring down Virtual World as being what you would say could be the top deck, right? Like the most represented deck. It's a mid-tier deck in my opinion. What it does is it makes Virtual Worlds, right? Well, if you're playing Outledge and you go Virtual Worlds and you do the whole play to skip their turn, I don't really think Outledge really cares. And, like, to me, the best version of the deck is Outledge Zoo. I don't really think there's anything else to go off of that. I mean, you're seeing a lot, if you go to these deck lists, you're seeing a lot of these top decks really pick up. You're seeing a lot of these top decks really pick up on, like, how do you counter this, right? So if you're playing against a VFD in this case, you're going to want to know what deck does it good. Well, Eldritch don't really care and Zoo don't really care. They're just going to stack on top till they get to Dryden, and then they're just gonna set a couple cards. They're just gonna set a couple cards and pass turn. So at that point, it doesn't even matter. So they can actually play around VFD, where a deck like Dinos and Dogma Invoked really can't do that. Again, Dogma Invoke has this just really huge problem that it just doesn't do enough in the TCG like it did in the OCG, and I think that actually renders a lot. Like when you start to look at like what decks are unfair or broken, like is it Eldritch, is it Zoo, is it Dogma? The Dogma engine on its own isn't really, to me, doing enough. I think it's just the splashability that you have with Eldritch that makes the decks like Zoo Eldritch and all this other stuff just see more play. Dogma Invoke just lacks the power, and they don't link together well. Like if you actually think about it, they don't do anything well together. They just like what I mean by that, let me say this. They don't link together well, and what I mean by that is the fact that they just don't. The Invoke cards do link with the Dogma cards, but they don't do anything. Like you can't search these cards to search another one. Like Maximus doesn't search you Invoke cards, and there's nothing that the Invoke cards search in the Dogma engine. And like Dogma Invoked is kind of like, it's not a hard board to break. You know what you're probably gonna face, and sometimes you'll open hands that is just Dogma, and like you'll have to activate Punishment, and then you'll draw an Alistair for turn, and now you're sitting there with the oop face, like, well, guess I'm fucked. Hope I don't get OTK'd and they don't lock me out so this Alistair can resolve. Like that's just, it doesn't seem to do enough. It's just not powerful enough, and it has no real like resource game. Like it's really like Winda's cool, but like when you know you're gonna see a Winda and there's a way to out it, and like Eldritch doesn't care about a Winda. Virtual Worlds can negate it and out it and stuff like that. And like there was a couple things that just weren't really good just about Dogma Invoked. That's my Dogma Invoked rant for another video, and that's pretty all I'm gonna say about it. It's just not powerful enough. It just doesn't do enough. Eldritch, it just grinds well. Like I just hate to say it, the deck just needs other engines to grind well, and it works well with the Zoo. Like I hate to say it, AA Zeus with like 2 materials under it is cool. It doesn't do anything. Like it could lose to Droplets. It's kind of dumb to make, but if you have it with 4 materials underneath a Zeus, that's a double board wipe at that point, and you're setting Eldritch cards, and the Eldritch cards float. Like I always say, they floating, they grinding, they're making sure you're plussing resources. Excuse me. And like, man, Drytrons, if you have not seen this, it's got that tier 1 potential going on there. You know, they are drawing, they lose to draw, and they lose to Bell, which is another point that I need to make about this weekend. Was a lot of players dropped in perm. They dropped in perm to play Bell or something or the other. They dropped, and you know, the discussion was, well, why would they have done that? Well, why would you play Bell over Imperm? Well, Imperm don't really stop anything when everything activates in the hand or the grave. Like think about it. What does Imperm do to Eldritch? You Imperm them, they pass turn, right? Like they don't pass turn. They don't do anything. Like Lord doesn't, like Imperming Lord doesn't, or getting to that doesn't do anything. And like what Bell does is it stops a whole lot of stuff. Like my friends have given me tons of lift. It stops the Eldritch traps. It stops Pot of Avengers. It like Bell stops most of the drive turn cards. It stops Invocation. It stops Chalkonine or Tiger Mortar. It stops Crow. It stops Call By. It stops all of the PK traps. It stops Break Sword. It stops the Virtual Worlds from adding. It stops Cloud Castle. It stops OV Raptor second effect. I guess you can change missile of that. It just stops so many cards, and with that, it just does so much more. Like Virtual Worlds activate in hand, so Imperm doesn't do anything. It's not good against Eldritch, like I said. Drytron activates in grave, and like Dryden just sets back row and pass, and you can't target goons. So what's the point in playing Imperm? You might as well just try to stop them with Bell, which is actually a meta call. It's actually good. That's how the meta changes. Like that's the meta change that you have to acknowledge and look at. Like that's what it does. Like Bale just right now is better for that. And when you're leaving an event like the LCS and now you're getting ready to go to like something else, like the Yu-Gi-Oh day or whatever next event they got, you now have to deal with like virtual worlds. You now know how to, I think, my opinion, here's how I see it, right? When you talk about like control decks or something like that, I think Drytron is like, I'm sorry, when you talk about control decks, not combo. Sorry. When you talk about control decks, I think Zoo and Outledge or whatever hybrids you want to say, that's the best control deck. You got your mid-tier deck sitting here at Virtual World, which is pretty good. I can't deny it. And I think, I hate to say it, but the best combo deck is Drytron. It is. If you're a combo player, you're probably going to be looking at Drytron as a good deck. You know, some people like rituals. Y'all like all that ritual stuff. The deck has a good resource game and stuff like that. Apparently, I can see why it sees play. It makes a whole lot of sense to why it would honestly see a whole lot of play. Like at that point, like it's good. You in on if you do the Cotton build, the Jesse Cotton build, the good old potato head build that Cotton's made, you're probably drawing 7. I think you get like, you in with 7 cards in hand and like a grave full of Drytrons, and then you have you in on like monsters and spells negates with Herald and the Link 2. They just link climb and then they make ruler, and then they're just like, all right, fight me. And then it's like, that's what some decks can't out that. And Eldritch special summon, so it's gonna have a problem. Hey man, maybe we'll see how the meta is gonna go. Dragoons is a problem, not a problem. I think like when you play bricks, like when you gotta play a whole lot of bricks, I don't really see Dragoons as a problem. Like decks do break. Like I don't think Dragoons is good with other stuff around it when it don't break. But it makes it weird when you're playing like Dogma, Eldritch Dragoons. I don't know how that works. I guess in a sense, it's really weird. I don't think the Dogma engine is like broken. For that matter, I don't think it's just as bad as any other deck. So yeah. So top decks, I think go to Virtual World, Eldritch and Zoo hybrids or variants, whatever. Eldritch variants. We're just gonna say Eldritch variants because Zoo on its own just doesn't do enough. And then Drytron sitting there. Other decks I think that have future to kind of be in the rogue variants that could get tops are Prank Kids. Prank Kids are really good. I think they're just slept on. I just think the deck just doesn't have a good pilot because they just don't, like when you're going into these events. And I think that's really it I want to get to today. So you all have a great day. Peace out. Don't forget to, if you enjoyed what you heard, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right, Shredder out.